As of right now, the solitary confinement group is officially split up. Now, I know a lot of you are going to be confused and want to know what's happening, so I brought a whiteboard. The first thing you guys need to know is it's completely my fault. Do not blame anyone but me for the podcast ending. I personally took issue with some narrator's actions, and that led to a waterfall of events to where we are now. So it all started with VidCon. The convention was great, we had a super fun time, but there were many instances where narrator would do something that I would disagree with, and it would lead to a response from him that I would consider uncalled for. So after VidCon, I spoke to Rack. I went up to him like this, and I said, Rack, I don't really want to do the podcast with narrator anymore. I'm gonna leave. Woo, there I go. That's an arrow. And then Rack was like, well, if you're going, I might as well go myself. So, there he goes. And then I proposed to Rack that we do another podcast, just the two of us. Two little guys. Rack said okay, but we didn't really have a name for the podcast at the time. I waited until Rack was done editing his little vlog for VidCon to talk to narrator about my concerns and the reasons I would ultimately be kicking him off the podcast. What I essentially ended up saying was, we have a very toxic relationship, and I think it would be best for both of us if we stopped interacting publicly. After that, I tweeted out on the podcast Twitter account that we'd be coming out with information very soon. And then I went on a trip for a week to see my grandparents. While on the trip, Rack and I decided on a name. We decided on the name Spit Take. Besides the name, we didn't really have any other ideas. We just knew we were going to do a podcast. And that was pretty much all we planned while I was on the trip. And we didn't really plan anything else for the podcast afterwards. I get back from my trip and I plan to announce Spit Take in the coming weeks. And I let the people in my stream know what's going on, so they had a little insider info. Ciao. About 2 days in, after I got back from my trip, narrator tweeted on his personal Twitter account about how Rack and I had not kept him in the loop. Now, personally, I don't think there was anything to keep him in the loop on. All we had decided on was a name. But these tweets led to many fans saying that Rack and I were acting like children. So then I ended up sending a little instant message, a little AOL, to narrator, and I wanted to express my concern. I told him nothing had really changed with the podcast plans and that we were still kicking him, and he expressed his anger in being told he was kicked, and also having my stream viewers know more about what was happening with the future of the podcast than him. I haven't personally spoken to narrator since then. I'm sure he's going to watch this video. I tried hearing him out, but he didn't really send any more messages to me, so I just kind of assume we're not on speaking terms anymore. A few days later, Rack came to me and said, I'm not sure I want to do Spit Take anymore. It feels unfair to narrator, which I completely understood. Instead, he's going to be doing a podcast with JC called Homie Talk, which I'm very excited for. I think it'll be a great podcast. I'm in full support of it, and you guys should be too. And that brings us up to the present pretty much. With fans in disarray, everyone's confused on what's happening, and I'm here to crush people's dreams. As of right now, like I said, the solitary confinement group is officially split up. And like I said before, if there's anyone to blame, it's me. If I had not chosen to express my issues with narrator, then the podcast would still be together. Now, I personally think narrator's a terrible person, but that should not in any way affect how you see him. Please continue to support him and don't let any petty behind-the-scenes problems affect how you see us. This stuff happens to everyone. It just so happens that this is a very public friendship. Now, moving on from the Solitary Confinement podcast, I know one of the first things you guys are going to ask is, will you guys be keeping the old stuff up? And yes, we will. Every episode of the Solitary Confinement podcast will be staying up on the channel except for episode 5. Episode 5 will not be staying up due to it having my phone number in it. Apples to Avocados will also be continuing as well. I'm very excited to continue that. I think it's a great series and I think it's super fun to record. The channel as a whole, however, will be getting a huge facelift. Since Narrator and Rack are gone, I'm going to be changing the branding of the channel to be called Unzipped. And for Unzipped, I'm going to be doing my own podcast to try and make up for my failure to keep the Solitary Confinement podcast together, and I'm just going to be doing it with my friends Josh, Rister, and Altrav. I know this probably won't make up for the Solitary Confinement being split up, but I think something is better than nothing. If this does not make up for it, I completely understand. As a closing word, I just want to say the Solitary Confinement channel has always been like a second child for me. I love this channel. I love that we built up an amazing fan base for it, and I'm sorry that it had to be like this. Support Narrator and Rack in whatever they do, please. I'm begging you. And thank you guys so much for being amazing fans. Wait, I gotta write goodbye. Hold up. There we go. I wrote goodbye.